Hi, welcome. Hi, welcome. This is the Caddy Info Cadillac Chat. I don't think I'm going to have any guests tonight because I did a terrible job of scheduling that. I'm actually not going to be available. We normally do these on Thursday nights. I'm actually not going to be available tomorrow night. And so what I'm going to do is I wanted to chat with you just briefly, and then I'll actually post it tonight or where it goes on for tomorrow, so that at least you know this week that there won't be a post next week. I'm not sure if that's being perfectly clear, but so tomorrow night not available, so you're getting tonight's message for tomorrow night, and then next week won't be available. So but you'll know this week that wasn't available next week. So there you go. And maybe sometimes the other guys cover for me and carry on a chat regardless. But there you go. Cadillac released their global sales. As I said when we talked a little bit about U.S. sales, Cadillac is more focused on what their global sales have been than they are on what their U.S. sales have been. And they do break out sales by country. So if they sold, 14,000 cars in the United States during June, then they sold another 9,500 cars in China. And so then we have to kind of look at the mix to understand which car. So they release by model and they're released by country, but they don't release by model by country. So then we have to kind of go through and see which cars are doing best in which countries, so to speak. And so while the ATS sold 1,880 cars in the United States, the total was 5,200, which means that it did quite well overseas at about 3,400 sold outside the United States, or almost twice as many ATSs outside the United States as inside the United States. And I think people traditionally associate Cadillac with a large car, a midsize or a large car. And so that ATS form factor, although it's been very popular for BMW hasn't always been associated with luxury cars. And so making a small BMW with a small rear seat may be less of a competitive disadvantage for BMW than it is for Cadillac. The CT6s, they sold almost 1,000 of them in the United States at 962. They sold a total of 1,500. So they sold about almost not quite 600 outside the United States. So almost 962 inside the United States, about 600 outside the United States. The XTS, I would have thought the XTS, the United States was the big market for the XTS, but they actually sold twice as many outside the United States as they did inside the United States. So they sold 1,184 in the United States. They sold a total of 3,937. So clearly the XTS is a big seller more overseas than in the United States. The Escalades, they sold about 2,900 Escalades in the United States, and they sold a total of 3,600. So the lion's share all went in the United States. So the United States is basically very big on crossovers and SUVs right now. Outside the United States, the sedans are doing very well. And I think that still reflects the higher cost of gas in some places and more focus on fuel economy. In the United States, since oil prices have been very low, since they found so much more oil, that no one is there's been a big push back to crossovers and SUVs. The XT5 sold a total of 6,719 everywhere in the world, and of those 4,000 were sold in the United States. So again, the United States was the lion's share, although not to the extent of the Escalade. So the worldwide sales are filling in the sedan sales that feel a bit soft for Cadillac in the United States. And for the monthly sales, the U.S. sales were up 5%. Worldwide sales were up 14%. Now, worldwide, they're almost at par with last year so far. They're 1.5% behind. And if you want to go through these detailed statistics, if you'll go to the Caddy Info forums, then there's a post it's suddenly a chat tonight is the title of the post or similar, and the detailed global sales figures are there. And if you check the blog, there was a blog entry on July the 1st is what I'm comparing with US sales with the global sales so that we can kind of decipher the two. And then the ELR, they sold 96 ELRs worldwide, and 94 of them were sold in the United States. So clearly the electric Eldorado is clearly and probably the other two were sold in Canada or somewhere. The second market for Cadillac after the United States is China, where they're doing very well. Chinese sales were up 33% in June, so China continues to do well. And then Canada is a distant third, and then the Middle East, and they sell performance cars, and imagine the CT6 will sell well in the Middle East. And then the Europe and Russia together sell about a third of what Cadillac sells in the Middle East, and then other parts of the world. But so if you take the United States and China together, then that would have been 23,700 of the 25,700 sales. So basically, the United States, China, and Canada are Cadillac's market. United States, China, and Canada together accounted for all but 800 of the sales. So yeah, that's where the game is the United States, China, and Canada. And then it would be great if Cadillac had more sales in the UK and Europe and so on, but in the current sales, they're not a factor. I think that was the big thing. I got a little bit of, we've had a lot of discussion about air conditioning. I think the big thing with air conditioning is if you have a problem with air conditioning in your Cadillac, you actually need to diagnose the entire system. That air conditioning really isn't one of those systems where you just want to drain the refrigerant out or add more refrigerant. There actually is, this is a system that needs some careful diagnosis and understanding. And so if you're having a problem with your air conditioning, before you do anything, you should get one of your friends who actually knows more about air conditioning, knows how to properly service air conditioning, or take it to, an independent certified dealer or a Cadillac dealer and get their advice on your air conditioning, because you actually you can cause a bad diagnosis by trying quick fixes with your air conditioning. So in other words, if you're only having a problem with the diverter actuator door, which mixes hot air and cold air, if it's not allowing the cold air into the cabin, but you think the problem is the Freon or the refrigerant, and in the process of trying to add more refrigerant, you just drain the refrigerant from the system, or in the process of, in the interest of trying to add more refrigerant, that you overfill the refrigerant, then now you can cause the system not to work properly. But now it's not working properly for two different reasons. And when the average air conditioning shop looks at it, their problem is, this is one of those classic issues, right? That when you come in with an air conditioning problem, they're going to want to fix everything so that they don't get a callback on it. So in other words, they're going to want to replace the compressor. They're going to want to evacuate the system, and then they're going to want to go through it completely, make sure it's holding pressure, put a new compressor in place, and give you a high bill for it. And so if you, and that's great if you want a brand new air conditioning system, and then it should last you, another 10 years or something. But it's not great if you don't want to throw a whole bunch of money at your car. And so if you're in that circumstance, though, don't try the quick fixes. You have to, the air conditioning system, like other complex systems, you need to actually consider the way the system works, what the different pressures should be. You need to find out what your current pressures are. You have to consider whether the switches and power flow is getting properly to the compressor, if the compressor is reacting properly, if your actuator mixer door is working properly, and so on. And so it takes a little care. It's not something that you can't do, but it does take some care to actually understand what's going on with your air conditioning. Sometimes you can get away. Sometimes when the air conditioning doesn't work, the problem really is that you don't have enough refrigerant, and you can get away with adding some more refrigerant. But that's not the way to do it. The way to do it is to find out what's going on, what's actually causing your air conditioning not to blow cold, and then to diagnose it appropriately, find out what's really wrong with it, and then solve the real problems instead of just throwing money at it and hoping for the best. And so that's what I would urge you to do, is before you jump too far, jump in with both feet. The other thing is, we had a gentleman post in the forum that he had gotten a 2001 DeVille and he wanted to heat it up, make it go faster. And there are some incremental things that you can do in terms of the exhaust. Cadillac is tilted toward more restrictive, low, better sound attenuating exhaust than a performance exhaust, and people have reported that they have had good luck with that. Our friend Tim Carroll over at Carroll Custom Cadillac does some custom intakes. I had done some testing just on drop-in filters of different flavors with my 1996 STS, which had the North Star engine, and did not find any benefit from just dropping in a K&M filter or just dropping in a blue filter and so on, that the Delco filter did as good a job or had as good a flow, a nice clean filter. Obviously, keep your filters clean, keep your plugs, replace the plugs if you haven't, change the oil if you haven't, and keep the tires inflated. Get the car in good condition before you go try and race it. So that's number one, is get the car in top condition, and then talk about performance improvements. But every engine is an air pump. Every engine is an air pump. And so the more air you can get into the engine, the bigger explosion you can have to run the pump, and the more exhaust you can get out of the engine, then the more power it's going to make. And so you have to think about those different elements. Is how am I going to get more air into the engine? So I want to reduce the restrictions for breathing, and I want to reduce the output. You also want to look at aftermarket tuning if your car's not under warranty. If your car's under warranty, aftermarket tuning can cause the dealer to it can cause issues with your warranty, is a good way to put it. Dealers should not void your warranty because of tuning. However, some dealers argue that they should. But the engine's an air pump. So what the tuning does is it lets you take advantage of some of the performance mods that you might make. So in other words, if you introduce more air, then the engine needs to compensate by introducing more fuel. And a lot of times, most fuel injected engines will compensate within a range, but they may. What you'd like to find out is the engine currently running in terms of rich or lean? Is it currently running in the right state? And so I think number one, when you're wanting to do any performance mods, is think of it scientifically, that what you'd like to have first is a baseline that tells you exactly how is your car performing today. So if what you're focused on is 0 to 60 times, if what you're focused on is horsepower, if what you're focused on is top speed, if what you're focused on is quarter mile, then your very first question is, how's my car doing today? And is the result you're getting repeatable? In other words, what you want to do is measure it again, measure it again, measure it on different days, measure it under different conditions, and understand how repeatable your result is. And then as you make mods, retest in the same way, keeping as many things the same as possible so that you can understand whether the change that you've made was beneficial or detrimental. And then post everything on Caddy Info so that we can all find out how you did, because I love reading that stuff. But what I actually love is fact-based analysis, where people have actually run a 0 to 60 acceleration, or measured the actual performance of their car, made a careful change, and carefully measured the benefit or disadvantage. One of the guys with the Aurora, which had a 4-liter North Star back in the day, he wanted to test and see if a cone filter would do better on his car and so on. And so he actually measured it on the dyno, changed the intake plumbing, and then measured it on the dyno again and recorded what the benefit was. And that's exactly, we don't all have a dyno handy, but that's exactly what you're trying to do, is figure out what's important to you, measure the car's performance now with you driving, check your repeatability for measuring the performance, make the change, measure your performance again for however many trials you need in order to demonstrate repeatability, and then see what the benefit was. Too many people think that they have made improvements when actually what they've done is slowed their car down. And so then they're shocked when they make improvement A and improvement B and improvement C, that the car's not faster than it was. And so I'm a big proponent for make a change to your car, get a good firm baseline, make a change to your car, and then determine whether the change was beneficial or not beneficial. Thank you very much for listening this week. As I said, we will not have a chat on next week in case the guys pop up at the forum and Jim hosts the chat, or somebody else hosts the chat. We did see Texas Jim back in the forums this week, so big shout out to Texas Jim. Glad to see him back around. Glad to see more new users in the forum, in the Caddy Info forum, and welcome. Even if it sounds like sometimes the answers you're getting are what's the right word? When you're trying to answer people's problems in forums, people come and they say, "Oh, my car's broken, help." And so sometimes it can get frustrating, because if you don't give a very detailed explanation of exactly what's going on with your car, what you've tried so far, what you changed recently that might contribute, or modifications that you've made to your car that might contribute, and if people suggest to you, please go check A, and you don't go check A, you instead repeat the problem, then sometimes the responders can become frustrated. And so just be patient with them. That is not your fault. It's that 17 other times other people who have posted and weren't listening carefully. But just listen carefully to the advice and respond to the advice that's given, and then that way you can help the responders help you enjoy your Cadillac. And because that's what everybody is here on the Caddy Info forum for, is to talk about how much we enjoy our Cadillacs. And so thank you for listening in. If you want to be on the chat sometime, contact me or respond in the forums, or let me know on Twitter that you want to be on the chat. We do have one of the things I posted this week was about a company that's making reinforced intercooler bricks for the second generation CTSVs with the LSA, which had an intercooler brick. So big shout out to them, because I love to see people coming out with new products for these cars. And if you are over boosting your CTSV, then please go look at this new intercooler, reinforced intercooler brick. Basically, they're doing a thing where you can send them your intercooler brick to be modified, or they have some that are already modified, and then you can get theirs in and swap yours out, and then that will help you. You know, it prevents your intercooler brick from collapsing under the if you have increased the boost. So dedicatedmotorsports.com. So shout out to dedicatedmotorsports.com is who's doing that. And you can find that link in the forum. I will recopy that to tonight's thread too. Okay, so if you do want to be on, or if you, and I guess the other point there is, if you have new Cadillac products and you would like to talk about them on the chat one week, what happens is we record this as a video chat and then save it off as the audio only podcast so that people can enjoy it however they prefer. Thanks for tuning in. Bye-bye.